Want the entire corrupt Washington establishment to hear our words, when we say, you know what we're going to say? We're going to win today, and we're going to Washington, D.C. to drain the swamp.
President-elect Donald Trump repeatedly promised to drain the swamp in Washington, D.C. if he became elected, and he was. But as the president-elect begins to make his appointment decisions, well, my next guest isn't sure that draining the swamp is actually going to happen. He's former presidential candidate Ron Paul. He joins us now. And thank you for being with us, Congressman. Why are you skeptical that President-elect Trump will be unable to fulfill his promise?
Well, we all hope he's successful, but I'm skeptical because, I got involved in politics in the early 70s, and my goal was to drain the swamp. And I think every single year since the Republicans or Democrats in charge, the government always got bigger. And that's why I think he has a great idea, and there's a lot of enthusiasm for it. But there's a lot of names thrown around that, that might be in the administration that aren't exactly the kind of individual that will change things. The other concern I have is even when there may be some people that get into the administration, there may be some sincerity, because I can remember in the past when they would put somebody at the head of the post office and say, he's a businessman and he's going to make it work like a business. Well, we know that's a false assumption.
Yes, we do.
They do that. But there's also the deep state, the invisible government, the shadow government, the people in the military-industrial complex, the financial industry, the Federal Reserve, and it's so big and powerful.
Let me add, what I would say is, and it's a term that might not be in vogue today, but the good old boy network. I mean, I had the honor of working in Washington for about a year and a half, and what you saw were people who would say one thing condemning these kinds of practices, but on the other hand, being a part of a system in which they were making their livelihoods. And I think that's what infuriates people. When I lived in Cleveland, Ohio, that kind of duplicity is what infuriates people. And if President-elect Trump doesn't clean that up, doesn't he risk alienating people in the Midwest and his base of supporters?
Oh, absolutely, and that is the tragedy. And some of the things, he might be very sincere, and he might try to get some good people, but the job may be overwhelming. But what I have suggested is, so far, I haven't seen the kind of individual that will really do the job, and that's where the real challenge is. But there's so much momentum involved.
Sure.
The momentum. Where do you cut? Matter of fact, even the campaign gave me no hints. Other Republican campaigns have given me more hints that they maybe really wanted to get rid of the Department of Education and the Department of Energy. I didn't hear about that. I've heard, well, we tried monetary policy, hasn't worked all that well. But what we need now is fiscal policy, which means spend money and deficits don't matter. It's a Keynesian approach. We need infrastructure. Yes. That's a 1930s issue, and we're going to rebuild the military. And of course, I don't worry about rebuilding the military. I think we have a pretty good military, and pretty strong, and we can defend ourselves against anybody who would dare attack us.
Let me interrupt you on this, because we've been playing cabinet roulette, I'll call it, as the different people go in and out of Trump Tower. Some of your supporters actually want you to be named to a cabinet position, and I know this has been asked and you've denied it, but honestly, are you being considered, and is there a position you would accept?
No, I'm not being considered. I don't think that's the slightest possibility that would happen. But no, I think if somebody was very honest and would like to have me give them an opinion about something, I would do my very best to give an honest opinion. But to be in there, I don't think an individual like myself would blend in, because I think I know the system well enough that it would be too frustrating, if I was appointed to the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, I was going to bring this up.
I want to get rid of the Federal Reserve, so I'm not going to be a very obedient member of...
Janet Yellen's term is up in 2018, and I was going to say there's one position I know you would take. It would be the position of being the last chairman of the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, if the sentiment was there and everybody was ready for it, and who knows what might be ready, because central banking in the last 10 years has lost a lot of credibility. When I started talking about the Federal Reserve, nobody even cared about it. But in the last 10 years, they're starting, the Fed, they're part of the problem. They kept interest rates too low, too long, and they're the problem that we have. And here they have interest rates at 0% for all these years, and there's no improvement. So yes, it's getting to the point, but I think what's going to happen, there's not going to be one individual like myself who's all of a sudden going to be able to turn the switch. I think they'll eventually sort of self-destruct their policies. And in a way right now, look at what the interest rates are doing. Everybody said if the Fed twisted the switch and raised interest rates a quarter of a point, the stock market would crash. But look at what's happened. They've gone up. The market sort of has driven them up. The stock market is skyrocketing. That's how unpredictable it is. But eventually, though, central economic planning through monetary policy that we have tried has exhausted itself, and something new will have to come about.
You get the last word. Ron Paul, thank you very much for joining us on Risk and Reward.
That our next guest, if first time he's on camera, will have a smile on his face. His name is, come on, smile please, Dr. Ben Carson, please, come on. You can do better than that, Dr. Carson. Come on, it's Saturday morning, for heaven's sake. Okay, all right. What do you make of Hillary Clinton being introduced at that concert there for Jay-Z and all that he has done and said about women and violence? What's your take, please?
Well, my take is that she is trying to cultivate votes, and in her mind, in the African-American community, it's all about bebop and jazz and being cool, and she really doesn't seem to appreciate the fact that many people in the African-American community are intellectual, and they're actually capable of looking at the circumstances around them, recognizing what's going on in their communities, and recognizing that basically she's full of untruths.
You put that so delicately, and then you have the big smile. That's good. Now, the latest Fox News poll shows that Donald Trump is supported by just 8% of voters. Only 8%. How about that? Because that's a very low number.
It is a low number, although it's a higher number than Romney or McCain had. But recognize that a narrative has been spread throughout our society, and particularly in the black community, that Donald Trump is a racist, and if you're voting for him, you're an Uncle Tom, you're a sellout, you're this, that, and the other. So a lot of people who are going to vote for him are not going to admit that. So I don't think that polling is accurate by any stretch of the imagination. And recognize that he has reached out, and he's talked about the thing that is most important, and that is education. I don't care what your race is or what your economic circumstances are. If you get a good education, you write your own ticket. And we have large groups of people, particularly in our inner cities, who are consigned to these inappropriate schools that are not effective, and they're not getting an education. It changes the trajectory of one's life completely.
Doctor, may I just say something on my own behalf here? I think that Donald Trump's biggest winning issue is school choice. Isn't that the most vital thing for our inner cities, for all across America? Isn't that the big issue here?
It's a huge issue, and I, for the life of me, can't figure out why, the president and the Democrats don't understand how important that is. Why would they not want people to get the best possible education? And, the answer to that is not a pleasant answer.
Look, isn't it all about the teachers' union, which votes and gives a great deal of money to the Democrats and votes in lockstep with the Democrats, and they've got that locked down in our inner cities? That's the reason, isn't it? It's the teachers' union.
Right, special interest. Virtually anything that comes out of Washington that doesn't make sense, it's because there's a special interest group behind it. And when Donald Trump talks about a swamp, I mean, it is incredibly corrupt, both Democrats and Republicans. And a lot of the Never Trump Republicans are very comfortable in the swamp, and they certainly don't want to see somebody come in and drain it. So they would stick together with the Democratic swamp creatures. But it's so important to get them all out, because this country is not supposed to be about them. It is supposed to be about we, the people. And I believe the American people are very smart. And that's why Thomas Jefferson said that we would come to this point. But before we changed into something else, the people of America would recognize what they were about to lose. And a very rapid grassroots movement would occur and they would regain control. I do believe that that's what's going to happen, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing the pundits scratching their heads and saying, what the heck just happened here?
I'm looking forward to the media when they figure out that you just called Democrats swamp creatures. But that's another story, sir. And we're very, very happy and privileged to have you on the show this morning on a Saturday. Dr. Ben Carson, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That was President Trump yesterday ringing in 2019, vowing to make it another winning year. So what does he need to do to drain that swamp and fight the establishment? Fox News national security strategist Dr. Sebastian Gorka is a former deputy assistant to President Trump and the author of Why We Fight. He joins us now this morning. Doctor, happy 2019. Thanks for being here this morning. Up nice and early. We appreciate it. So as you look forward to 2019, as someone who knows the president's thinking, the inner workings of the White House, what needs to be done to further implement what the president was elected on?
I think there's two big issues or main objectives that the president has to focus on. Number one, he has to make it clear that the wall is non-negotiable, despite the fact that now the lunatics will take over the asylum in the House as the Democrats, people like Maxine Waters, become chair people. That means he's not going to get the requisite funding he needs from Congress, so he needs to continue to reprogram monies from the defense budget because this is now a national security issue. Secondly, there's a saying in Washington, and it is very, very true, that personnel is policy. We've had people leave the White House. We've had people from the cabinet move on. He needs to create more MAGA-driven people inside the building. He has to have people who are loyal to the MAGA agenda, the Make America Great Again agenda, come into the building to support him. And people like Mick Mulvaney need to stay as chief of staff, not just acting chief of staff. If he does those things, we can survive the next 2 years of insanity in Congress.
Doctor, let's dissect both of those briefly. So you talk about the wall. So are you downplaying the significance of this shutdown fight for the money in the budget? Or are you saying even if he gets money in the budget, there's money to be had in the Defense Department budget to repurpose as well? What's a win look like there?
I think it's the latter. I think, the $5 billion would be great, but right now, if you look at the amount of people that are coming across the border illegally, you look at the arrests that ICE is making of MS-13 members, you look at the fentanyl threat, we had more than 60,000 people die of overdoses last year. That's multiples of everybody who died in the Vietnam War. The southern border is a national security threat. So irrespective of what happens with the shutdown, we need to use defense appropriations to keep building the wall.
So, Doctor, you said it right. Personnel is policy. So the chief of staff role, the attorney general, the secretary of defense, you feel like this president is looking at people not just who have the qualifications for the job, but are they truly faithful to implementing the agenda as opposed to trying to save America from what the president wants to do?
Yeah, I think it goes even lower down than chief of staff and cabinet level. One of the reasons I resigned in 2017 from the White House is at that point, with people like H.R. McMaster and others, there were very significant personnel inside the building who simply were not on the Trump train. They may have had certain, career reputations, but they weren't there for the reasons we were there. Those are the kinds of individuals. That's the yardstick the president needs to use. He needs to have people who are not just patriots to America, but loyal to the agenda that put him in the building. Then we'll be okay for the next 2 years.
So, Doctor, we talked a lot about it. 2018 was a big year for accomplishments, from the Iran deal to moving the embassy, to scrapping TPP. I mean, a lot of things. Are you bullish about 19 and getting things done in that year?
Look, with the arch deal maker in the building, absolutely. And as the president has said repeatedly, he's not going anywhere. He's going to be there for another 6 years. So we need to take a deep breath. We need to be more circumspect about what's possible and what isn't with a Democrat-controlled Congress, or at least the House of Representatives. But no, he will never give up on America. He'll never go soft on his promises. And the other thing is he'll never go neoconservative. So, yeah, have faith, but it's going to be a a bumpy 2 years, but it's okay. He's the president.
Dr. Gorka, happy 2019. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.